The night sky above Earth was quiet, but it was the kind of silence that felt wrong. Like a breath held too long, the stars seemed to watch without blinking, cold and distant far beyond the orbit of the moon. Listening posts lined the black emptiness like lonely guardians. One by one their signals began to vanish. No alarms, no flashing lights, just silence swallowing the void. The technicians at the Terran Command Center leaned closer to their monitors, their faces pale under the cold glow of the screens. "Signal lost from Outpost 47, one whispered. His voice trembled. Another technician turned to the commander. "Sir, Outpost 48 just went dark too." Commander Hale's jaw tightened. He had seen battles. He had lived through wars, but this silence, it felt different. It felt like something was approaching, something too big to ignore. "Try to re-establish contact," he ordered. But his voice carried a shadow of doubt. The room filled with static and broken whispers of data, then nothing. A map of the outer border flickered red as more outposts disappeared like dying embers. A young officer at the back swallowed hard. "Sir, that's the entire eastern line." Hale didn't look away from the map. His hands rested on the cold steel table. "Steady but tight. They're here," he said quietly. The words fell heavy, like a storm warning out in the void. Past the last Terran beacon, shadows moved. They were not asteroids, not debris. They were ships, thousands of them, stretching across the darkness like a black tide. The Imperial Grand Armada had come. Their hulls reflected faint starlight, forming a wall of steel that seemed endless. On the flagship of the Armada, Admiral Varen stood with a grin carved across his face. His golden armor shone under the lights. "Poor humans," he said softly. "They don't even know what's coming." His second-in-command bowed. "Our scouts confirm their defenses are minimal." "Admiral?" Varen chuckled. "Good. Let's make this clean. Let's erase their world before sunrise. Back on Earth." Panic began to rise like a quiet storm. Every encrypted channel lit up with reports, chatter and unanswered calls. The council chambers filled with officers, ministers and desperate voices. A general slammed his fist on the table. "We don't have the fleet to stop them." An older scientist spoke up, his voice rough like broken glass. "We don't need a fleet." All eyes turned to him. He slowly pushed a dusty folder onto the table, its cover marked with one word, Titan. Commander Hale's eyes narrowed. "That project was buried years ago." The scientist nodded. "And for good reason." He leaned forward, his voice lower. "But the Empire is not ready for what sleeps beneath the ice." As they spoke, in a frozen military facility deep under the Antarctic, alarms began to hum softly. Metal doors unlocked one by one, revealing a massive hangar bathed in darkness. At the center lay a single black shape under frost and shadow, its surface smooth and ancient. Like a sleeping giant, meanwhile, the Armada moved closer. The Imperial ships advanced in perfect formation. Silent and confident, they did not expect resistance. They did not believe Earth had anything left that could hurt them. A young officer in Terran Command's war room broke the silence. "Sir, what's Titan?" Hale didn't answer at first. His eyes were fixed on the glowing red line, showing the enemy fleet closing in. He finally spoke low and steady. "It's something we built when we thought we were already doomed." The scientist's hands trembled as he placed a code cylinder on the table. "If we wake it up, there's no going back." Commander Hale stared at the frozen wall of steel on the screen. Then he reached for the cylinder. His fingers tightened around it. In the dark hangar, old engines coughed to life. The walls trembled as deep power lines surged awake after decades of silence. A single red light blinked on the ship's bow, followed by a low, heavy sound like something exhaling after a long sleep. "Admiral," a voice crackled on the Imperial flagship. "We've detected movement on the surface." Varen frowned. "A fleet?" "No, sir. Just one signature. One ship." Varen laughed. "How touching." He turned to his officers. "Let the humans have their last toy." On the frozen ground, the black warship rose slowly from its icy grave. Snow and steel fell away as its engines burned through the night. The comm towers shook as its massive hull cast a shadow across the base. Hale stood at the control deck, listening to the roar of something ancient returning to the world. "Sir," the comms officer whispered, "it's active." Hale closed his eyes for a brief moment, then opened them sharp and clear. Then let's make them remember who we are. The sky, once silent, now trembled. A storm was coming, but not the one the Empire expected. They thought they were hunting prey. But something far older, far deadlier, had just woken up to hunt them, and in that moment, the silence became the Empire's first warning, not their victory. The hangar groaned as old steel doors opened for the first time in decades. Cold mist rolled over the floor, clinging to the boots of the soldiers who stood in tight formation. Lights flickered to life one by one, revealing the shape in the center of the vast chamber. It was massive, black and silent. Its hull was smooth, its angles sharp. Like a predator crouched in the dark, Commander Hale walked slowly toward it, every step echoing through the frozen air. The old scientist followed him, his breath visible in the cold. "We built it in secret," he said softly. "And when the galaxy thought Earth was finished," Hale didn't look back. "Why was it buried?" The scientist's lips pressed into a thin line. "Because it was too powerful and too dangerous." Up in the control tower, a young engineer's hands shook as she brought ancient systems online. Lines of old Terran code flashed across screens, some so old that no one in the room fully understood them anymore. "Sir," she called, "its core is still intact. Power cells at 30%, engines on standby." Hale's eyes narrowed. 30 is enough. The black warship hummed, faint at first, like a heartbeat buried under ice. The floor beneath their boots began to vibrate. "What do we call it?" the young officer whispered. The scientist gave a dry laugh. "It already has a name." He pointed to the faded letters on the side of the hull. Half buried under frost, Titan outside. The storm howled across the Antarctic wasteland as massive clamps disengaged from the ship's frame. A deep voice echoed from the intercom. "All external locks released, Captain. We're ready for ignition." Hale took a long breath. "Do it." Engines that had not burned in 40 years roared back to life. The sound shook the hangar walls. Ice cracked and shattered as heat surged through the steel veins of the ship. Flames licked the snow. Soldiers shielded their eyes as the ship rose slowly from its cradle. At the Imperial flagship, Admiral Varin leaned over the hollow table, staring at a single bright dot on the display. "One ship," he muttered. "What are they trying to prove?" His officer smiled. "It's a relic, Admiral. It will burn quickly," Varin laughed. "Then let it burn." He turned to his comm officer. "Send the forward destroyers. I want to watch the humans break on the Titan's bridge." Dust covered everything. Old leather seats cracked. Rusted panels blinked weakly, but the ship's heart was alive. The AI core flickered with a single red light. A synthetic voice echoed through the empty deck. Calm and emotionless. "Welcome back, Commander Hale. It has been 40 years. Shall I prepare for war?" Hale stared at the central console. Yes, the bridge light shifted to crimson. Old systems woke like sleeping giants. The railgun bays extended. Stealth fields formed around the hull. And deep in the engine room, energy pulsed like thunder. The crew, young soldiers who had only read about old wars, watched in awe as the ship transformed from a relic to a beast. "Sir," the communications officer said nervously, "enemy vanguard incoming." Hale's gaze hardened. "Then let them come." The first Imperial destroyers broke through Earth's upper orbit like metal daggers. They formed a perfect line, their cannons glowing. The lead captain on the Imperial bridge smirked. "This will be quick." Back inside Titan, the AI spoke again. "Shall I deploy decoy systems, Commander?" Hale shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "Let them see us." The AI paused, then obeyed, on the Imperial flagship. Admiral Varin frowned as Titan appeared on the main display, sleek and silent. It didn't look like an old ship. It looked like something that should have never been buried. "Why isn't it retreating?" his officer asked. Varin narrowed his eyes. "Because they're arrogant or desperate. The first barrage came, blue plasma cutting through the void. But the shots missed, not because of luck, but because Titan was no longer where they thought it was. The ship moved like a shadow, faster than it should have. Older Imperial records never mentioned human ships moving like this. "Impossible," one Imperial captain whispered. Hale's voice came through the Titan comms, cold and calm. "You shouldn't have come here," Titan fired once. A railgun shell tore through space like a silent storm. It hit the lead destroyer dead center. The ship didn't explode. It folded. Crushed like paper, the crew on Titan stared, silent. The young officer whispered, "That was one shot." Reloading, the AI confirmed. A second shot followed, then a third. The Imperial line broke like glass. "Admiral," someone screamed on the Imperial flagship. "We're losing the Vanguard." Varen slammed his fist down. "How is this possible?" Back on Earth, cheers erupted in the command center. But Hale didn't smile. He knew this was just the beginning. The Grand Armada was still out there. And Titan was alone, Commander, the AI said softly. "Enemy fleet numbers are overwhelming," Hale exhaled slowly. "Good." He walked to the captain's chair, his boots echoing on the metal floor. "Then we'll give them something they'll never forget." The storm above Earth cleared as the Titan rose into orbit, its engines burning like a silent star. The galaxy had forgotten Earth, but Earth had not forgotten how to fight, and far out in the darkness, the Empire finally understood. Something far worse than fear had just woken up, and it was coming for them. The blackness of space stretched like an endless ocean as the Imperial Grand Armada advanced toward Earth. Their ships moved in perfect formation, like a wall of steel swallowing the stars. Each vessel carried enough firepower to crush entire planets, and together they believed they were unstoppable. Admiral Varen stood on the bridge of his flagship. Watching the glowing blue light of Earth grow larger, he felt no fear, only pride. "They've sent one ship," he said with a cold smile. "One ship to face an empire," his officers laughed quietly, but far ahead of the fleet. Something moved between the shadows of the stars. The Titan drifted silently, its engines dim, blending with the darkness. Inside, the bridge was quiet. Every crew member could feel the weight of what was coming. Commander Hale stood at the center, his hands behind his back, staring at the tactical display. A young officer whispered, "Sir, that's more ships than we've ever faced." Hale didn't look away. "Then we make this count." The AI's red core pulsed softly. "Admiral Varen's fleet is approaching at attack speed, Commander. Estimated time until contact, 20 minutes. Hale nodded slowly. "Good. Let them think we're waiting." Meanwhile, on the Imperial flagship, Varen leaned toward the holomap. The single Terran ship was marked as a small red dot against their vast blue fleet. "Why aren't they running?" one of his officers asked. Varen smirked. "Because they're proud. Or foolish, either way. It won't save them." He raised his hand. "Forward squadrons. Break formation and engage." The first wave of Imperial cruisers surged ahead, their engines glowing like blue fire, their scanners locked on Titan. "Target acquired," one captain said. "They're not moving." "Good," another laughed. "This will be quick." But Titan wasn't idle. In the silent bridge, Hessel gave a quiet order. "Engage cloak pattern Delta." The lights dimmed further, and the ship vanished completely from the enemy's sensors. The first wave of cruisers flew closer, blind to the danger waiting for them, Admiral. "We've lost visual contact with the target," an Imperial sensor officer said nervously. Varen narrowed his eyes. "Impossible." "Keep scanning." Titan appeared behind the formation, like a shadow rising from the deep. "Target lock confirmed," the AI said calmly. Hale's voice was steady. "Fire!" The railguns thundered without sound. A single shot tore through the lead cruiser's engines. Another pierced the heart of the second ship. Explosions flared like silent suns. The third cruiser tried to turn, but Titan was already gone. "Slipping back into the dark, sir," an Imperial captain screamed over the comm. "They're behind us. No, they're gone again." Panic rippled through the Imperial line. Admiral Varen's smile faded. "What kind of ship is that?" he hissed. On Titan's bridge, tension filled the air like static. The young officer swallowed hard. "Sir, they're regrouping." "More squadrons incoming?" Hale didn't blink. "Let them. The more they gather, the more we'll break." The second wave came in fast, hundreds of ships in a tight wedge, their formation perfect, their confidence restored. But Hale's strategy was already set. "AI," he said quietly. Initiate GhostNet. Around the Titan, decoy signatures bloomed like a web of light. Dozens of false targets appeared on Imperial scanners. The enemy fleet saw not one ship but a swarm, multiple contacts. A sensor officer shouted, "They have reinforcements." Varin slammed his hand on the console. "Fire everything!" A storm of plasma and missiles filled the void, but they struck nothing. The decoys absorbed the fury, glowing and fading one by one, and through that storm, Titan cut silently like a blade. It struck from below, its railguns smashing through 3 more ships before vanishing again. Back on the Imperial flagship, chaos spread. Officers shouted over each other. "We can't track them. Our formation is breaking. We're losing ships too fast." Admiral Varin gritted his teeth. "Enough. Pull the fleet into a wall. Force them to face us head-on Titan," the AI spoke softly. "They are changing tactics, Commander, forming a heavy line." Hale exhaled slowly. "Of course they are." His hands tightened behind his back. "They think brute force will solve this." The Imperial fleet aligned into a massive wall, row upon row of warships, cannons glowing. Their plan was simple: overwhelm the single ship with pure fire. Varin stood at the front of the bridge, his eyes burning. "Let's see your tricks now," he muttered. The Titan hovered in the darkness, silent and small compared to the Armada. But its engines burned cold and steady. Hale finally turned to his crew. "This is where it gets loud." The AI's voice lowered. "Shall I arm the spinal gun?" Hale's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Do it." The center of the Titan began to open like the eye of a storm. A long barrel extended from its core, glowing faint red. The spinal railgun was never meant to defend. It was meant to erase. "Target locked," the AI whispered. The Imperial fleet opened fire first, beams and plasma lighting up the black. The Titan moved forward through the storm, its shield rippling like water. "Fire," Hale said. The shot was silent but terrifying. A single streak of red ripped through the void. It didn't just hit one ship, it passed through 5 of them in a single line. The explosion that followed was so bright, it blinded the fleet's senses. On the Imperial flagship, alarms screamed, "We've lost the forward wall." Varin shouted orders, but panic had already spread. Formations collapsed. Captains screamed across comm channels, and ships drifted out of position. Hale stood unmoving, watching the red mark of destruction tear through their line. He didn't celebrate. He knew this was only a taste. The Grand Armada was still huge, but now it was bleeding. Varin gripped the rail of his bridge, his voice low and dangerous. "Whoever built that ship just declared war on an empire, and somewhere deep inside the Titan." The AI whispered softly to Hale, "They are afraid now." Hale's eyes hardened. Good, fear makes them weak. The void, once calm, now burned with light and wreckage. The battle for Earth had truly begun, and the Empire had just learned their enemy was not prey. It was the storm. The battlefield above Earth burned like a second sun. Wreckage drifted through the void, spinning slowly in silence. The Imperial Grand Armada had advanced with confidence, but now their flawless wall was cracked open. Entire formations had been ripped apart by a single Terran warship on the bridge of the Imperial flagship. Admiral Varin stood frozen for a moment, watching the feed. The glowing red line of destruction stretched across what had once been an unbreakable fleet. "Admiral," one officer stammered, "they took out 5 heavy cruisers in one shot." Another voice cut in from the sensor station. "And they vanished again. No reading, no signal. Nothing." Varin slammed his fist into the console. "No ship moves like that." His voice dropped lower. Colder, no ship should. Meanwhile, in the cold black between the fleets, the Titan drifted silently like a predator after its first strike. Inside, the bridge was dim, only the red pulse of the AI core lighting their faces. The young officer's hands shook as she spoke. "Sir, their fleet is trying to regroup." Hale kept his eyes on the display. "Good," he said calmly. "Let them believe they still have control." The AI's voice cut through the silence. "Enemy formations are shifting, Commander." "New pattern detected." Hale tilted his head. "Show me." Holographic light filled the room, revealing the enemy's new tactic. Dozens of ships were spreading wide, surrounding Titan's position. A trap on the Imperial flagship. Varen gave a sharp grin. "There you are," he whispered. His officers looked nervous, but they followed orders. "Form the closing net," he commanded. "We'll corner their little monster and crush it, back inside Titan." The crew felt the pressure building. "Sir," the sensor officer said, "they're closing in from every angle. They're trying to box us in." Hale didn't flinch. "I know." He walked slowly toward the captain's chair. "That means they've made a mistake," the young officer frowned. "A mistake." Hale's voice stayed calm. "They think we'll run." Titan's engines rumbled softly. Shifting to full combat mode in the engine bay, old power cores glowed like stars. "Commander," the AI said, "shall I activate the storm system?" Hale gave a single nod. "Yes, do it, outside." Titan suddenly went dark. Its entire signature disappeared. Sensors around the Imperial fleet screamed with static. Radar heat and light vanished like smoke in wind. "Admiral," a panicked officer shouted, "we've lost them again!" Varen's teeth clenched. "Find that ship!" In that moment, the void erupted, not with light, but with movement. Titan dropped from above the Imperial formation. Almost invisible, its railguns fired into their rear flank. Catching them where they were weakest, 3 ships exploded instantly, their burning remains crashing into others behind us. Someone screamed across the Imperial comms, "They're behind us again!" Varen spun toward the tactical display. His perfect net was unraveling before it had even closed. "All ships turn!" "Turn!" he shouted. But the order came too late. Titan had already vanished into the dark inside Titan. The crew was silent except for the hum of the engines. The young officer looked at Hale, half amazed, half terrified. "They didn't even see us." Hale's voice was quiet. "Steady. Good." The AI's red light flickered. "Admiral Varen has rerouted power to the core fleet." "He is preparing something," Hale frowned. "Something big." "Yes, Commander. A full energy surge is building." Hale walked closer to the display. "He's planning a trap within the trap." At that same moment, Varen stood at the center of his bridge, his grin back. "Let them dance in the shadows," he said. "We'll burn the shadows away." His flagship's core began to power up. The surrounding warships locked their weapons into a tight formation, forming a glowing sphere of overlapping fire. "The moment they appear," Varen growled, "everything fires." Back in Titan, Hale knew the Empire was waiting. He could feel the weight of their guns, their rage, their fear. "Sir," the communications officer whispered, "if we go in there, they'll throw everything at us." Hale's eyes narrowed. "Exactly." He tapped the console. "AI, prepare ghost charge, deep inside Titan." Energy built like a heartbeat. The hull shimmered faintly, but no one outside could see it. "Commander," the AI reported. "Ghost charge ready in 60 seconds, Hale nodded. "Bring us in." Titan didn't rush forward. It slipped like a whisper, cutting through the empty space between burning wreckage. It approached the glowing sphere of Imperial fire like a hunter walking toward its prey. "Target in range," the AI said. Hale's voice dropped. "Activate." The moment Titan crossed the threshold, Imperial sensors screamed, "We've got them." An officer yelled on the flagship, "Fire everything!" Hundreds of plasma bolts and energy beams lit up the void, converging on one single target. But just before impact, Titan split into dozens of ghost signatures, each identical, each moving. "Which one's real?" one Imperial captain shouted. "Which one?" The beams scattered across the void, striking nothing. Titan slipped through the chaos like smoke. Hale's voice echoed through the AI. Now, a storm of red light burst from Titan's railguns, cutting straight through the heart of the Imperial formation. The flagship shuddered under the shockwave. Dozens of ships shattered at once. Their glowing sphere turned into their grave. Varen grabbed the railing, his knuckles white. "What are they?" He roared. No one answered. Back on Titan, the crew stared at the destruction in silence. The young officer whispered, "Sir." That was their main defense. Hale looked out at the wreckage, his voice cold. "Then it's time to take the rest." The Empire had set a trap, but they didn't realize the hunter was already inside the cage. Titan's shadow vanished again into the smoke of their ruin, and for the first time in his career, Admiral Varen felt something he had never felt before: fear. The Imperial Grand Armada was no longer the wall of steel it had been when it arrived. The fleet that once darkened the stars was now a scarred and broken shadow of itself. Wreckage drifted like burning islands through the black ocean of space. Titan moved through it slowly, silent and cold, like a hunter among its prey. Inside the Imperial flagship, Admiral Varen gripped the edge of the console. His knuckles pale. "Report," he demanded. His officers avoided his eyes. One finally spoke. "Over 40% of the fleet is gone. Admiral, 23 capital ships destroyed. More disabled. Communication is a mess." Varen's teeth clenched. "And the Terran ship?" The answer came quiet. "Still out there, back inside Titan." The crew watched the tactical map as the Imperial icons blinked and vanished one by one. The young officer whispered, "Sir, they're starting to fall back." Hale stood at the center of the bridge, his hands behind his back. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "No," he said softly, "they're not retreating." "Not yet," the AI's voice pulsed softly through the bridge. "Admiral Varen is consolidating his remaining forces around the flagship. He's preparing a concentrated strike." Hale tilted his head slightly. He still believes he can win outside. The remaining Imperial warships began to move with precision again, not like the chaotic swarm they had become. Their formation tightened around the massive flagship. Energy signatures spiked, shields layered. "They're forming a fortress," the comm officer said. Hale nodded slowly. "Good. That means we know exactly where they'll be when we hit them. On the Imperial bridge." Varen breathed deeply, forcing calm into his voice. "They think they've broken us," he said to his officers. "They think we're weak, but this ends now." He raised his voice. "All power to the flagship cannons. Link remaining cruisers to our shield array. We're going to burn them out of the sky." His second-in-command hesitated. "Sir, we don't even know what that ship is." Varen's glare cut through him like a blade. "Then we learn by killing it." Titan's bridge stayed quiet. Everyone could feel the change in the air. This was no longer about dancing between shadows. The Empire had dug in, waiting, ready to throw everything into one final strike. Hale leaned over the console, watching the formation tighten like a clenched fist. "They've stopped chasing," the young officer said. Hale gave a small, cold smile. "That's their mistake." The AI's red core brightened. "Their shield strength is increasing, Commander. Direct assault may result in critical damage." Hale's reply came steady. "Then we won't attack them directly." He turned to the crew. "Power the storm drive." A low rumble shook the Titan's hull. The storm drive had been built for one purpose: to make a ghost out of steel. The stars outside the viewport stretched. Warping like a silent scream, the ship began to move faster, far faster than Imperial sensors could trace. On the Imperial flagship, sensor officers leaned over their panels. "They're gone again," one whispered. Varen slammed his fist. "They can't just disappear." But they had. Titans circled the fortress from the dark edges of space, its systems whispering quietly, its crew locked into silence. Hale stared at the glowing sphere of ships around the Imperial flagship. "AI," he said, "how long before their weapons are fully charged?" 2 minutes, the AI replied. Hale's voice lowered. "Then we have one." They struck fast. Titan appeared beneath the enemy fortress, hidden behind drifting wreckage, like a shark moving beneath a floating ship. "Fire sequence Alpha," Hale ordered. Titan's railguns roared to life. The first shot tore through the underbelly of a heavy cruiser. The second sliced through a battleship's engines. Fire lit up the void. The Imperial fortress reacted too slow. "Contact! Contact below!" A sensor officer screamed on the flagship. Varen spun toward the display. "Return fire!" But Titan was already gone, sliding through the darkness like smoke. Inside Titan, the crew held their breath. The young officer whispered, "They're confused." Hale's answer came steady. "Not for long." The Imperial fleet fired blindly into the dark. Massive energy beams tearing through empty space. "Lock on their flagship," Hale commanded. The AI's voice hummed, "Targeting locked." "Captain, But then something unexpected happened. A bright pulse erupted from the Imperial flagship. Not a weapon, but a shockwave. Titan shook violently. Alarms screaming across the bridge. What was that? The comm officer yelled. The AI responded. High energy pulse, disruptor class. They've disabled our cloak for 60 seconds. Hale gritted his teeth. Clever. For the first time in the battle, Titan stood exposed, surrounded by the entire Imperial fortress. Admiral Varen's voice echoed across open channels, cold and sharp. You hid well, Terran, he said. But now you die. Every Imperial gun turned toward the Titan. The void lit up with blinding energy as they fired everything they had. Shields flared, metal groaned, explosions shook the hull. The young officer clutched her console, shields dropping fast. Hale didn't move. AI, he said quietly. Storm drive full burn, Commander, the AI replied. The hull will not survive at that range. Hale's jaw clenched. We won't stay at that range. The Titan's engines roared like thunder. It vanished forward in a burst of light, cutting through the storm of energy like a knife. The flagship's shields burned as the Titan passed through their firing circle. The AI's voice rose. Spinal cannon charged. Fire, Hale said. The red beam cut through the center of the fortress, tearing ships apart in a single sweep. The Imperial flagship shook violently. Consoles exploding. Varen grabbed the railing. No, he shouted, but the rest was swallowed by the soundless blast. The fortress shattered like glass, ships spinning out of control, explosions blooming like dying stars. Titan emerged on the other side of the fire, bruised but still alive. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, smoke filled the air. Varen stared at the growing hole in his command ship. What are you? He whispered. On Titan, the AI's voice softened. Enemy command structure broken. Admiral Varen is still alive. Hale stared at the burning flagship ahead. His voice steady. Then we finish this. The hunter had cornered the beast, and for the first time the Empire bled. The void burned with wreckage. Thousands of destroyed Imperial ships floated silently, their lights fading into the cold darkness. Smoke and sparks filled the airless space like a dying storm. The Titan drifted through it, its hull scarred and cracked, but still alive. Inside the bridge, the crew sat in stunned silence. The young officer whispered, "Is it over?" Commander Hale stood at the viewport, staring at the remains of the Grand Armada. "No," he said quietly. "Not until he's gone." Across the distance, the Imperial flagship still burned, but had not yet fallen. Its engines flickered weakly, but its guns still glowed with power. Admiral Varen was alive. His voice echoed across the fleet's emergency channel. "All surviving units, form around me. We will not die running from a ghost." His face was bloodied. Half his armor melted, but his eyes still burned with pride. "This is not over," he growled, on Titan's bridge. The AI's red light pulsed. "Commander, the Imperial flagship remains operational. Power readings suggest a final weapon charge." Hale turned sharply. "A final strike," he said. The AI confirmed. "Yes, Commander." A planetary rail driver integrated into their ship's core. It's aimed at Earth. For a moment, no one spoke. The crew's faces went pale. Hale's jaw tightened. "They'd destroy a planet just to take us with them." The AI's tone stayed calm. "It would be effective." Hale's hand slammed down on the console. "Not while we're breathing." He turned to the crew. "Set course for the flagship." The young officer hesitated. "Sir, we've taken too much damage. If we engage again..." Hale cut her off, his voice low but fierce. "If we don't, there won't be an Earth left to defend." Titan's engines roared back to life. The great ship turned toward the burning flagship, pushing through debris and fire. Power rerouted to forward shields. The AI announced, "Weapon systems ready, though performance is reduced." Hale's gaze was fixed on the target. "That's all we need." Inside the Imperial flagship, chaos ruled. Sparks rained down as engineers tried to stabilize the power core. "Admiral," one shouted, "the rail driver is unstable. It will overload if we fire at full power." Varen's eyes were wild. "Then we overload it. I'd rather burn the Terrans than retreat." His officer tried to protest. "Sir, that could destroy us, then we die as soldiers." Varen roared. The officer stepped back in silence. The countdown began. 30 seconds until core alignment. Back on Titan. The AI's tone grew tense. "They are charging their core, Commander. Estimated detonation will destroy both ships." Hale nodded. "Then we hit them first." The young officer's voice trembled. "We don't have enough energy left for the spinal cannon." Hale turned toward the glowing red core of the AI. "Then we use everything we have." Titan's systems began to dim, diverting all remaining power to the forward cannon. Lights flickered across the bridge. The ship groaned like a wounded beast. "Power at 60%, the AI said. "Firing now will destroy us too." Hale's eyes stayed on the enemy flagship. "Do it anyway." The AI paused, then spoke quietly. "Understood." "Commander?" On the Imperial flagship, the countdown reached 10 seconds. Varen watched the massive weapon power up, the barrel glowing brighter than the sun. "Now," he whispered. "Now we end this." But in that same instant, a bright red light burst from the dark. Titan fired. The beam cut across the void, ripping through debris, tearing through what was left of the Imperial line. It struck the flagship dead center. The rail driver cracked open like an egg. "Energy spilling outward, no!" Varen shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the explosion. The flagship erupted into a storm of fire, the blast wave rolling outward. Consuming everything, Titan was caught in the light, its shield screaming, its hull breaking apart piece by piece. Inside, the bridge shook violently, panels shattered, smoke filled the air. The young officer screamed, "Shields collapsing!" Hale gripped the console, holding on as the world around him turned white. "Hold the course," he shouted. "Don't stop firing!" The AI's voice crackled, fading in and out. "Core unstable, evacuation, recommended." Hale shook his head. "Not yet." The explosion swallowed them both. The Empire's last weapon and humanity's oldest ghost vanishing into one massive fireball. Silence followed. Only drifting fragments and starlight remained. For a moment, it seemed that both sides were gone, but then, from the shadow of the dying explosion, a single light appeared. Titan's engines flickered weakly. The ship emerging from the chaos. Battered but alive, the AI's voice returned. "Softer now, damage, severe, systems failing, but operational." Hale exhaled slowly. "We're still here." The young officer sat trembling, her eyes wet with relief. "Sir, we did it." Hale looked at the view of space, where the flagship once stood. "No," he said quietly. "We survived, but we didn't win." "Not yet," the AI spoke again. "Enemy fleet signatures, 0. Earth is safe." Hale's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Then maybe that's enough." He turned to his crew. "Signal command. Tell them the sky is clear." As the Titan drifted over the silent battlefield, its once black hull now scarred with fire and light, the crew watched the stars return one by one. The Empire's greatest armada was gone, and Earth had survived by the strength of a ship the galaxy had forgotten. Far away, deep within the AI's fading circuits, a final line of code flickered to life. Humanity, status victorious. And as the Titan floated through the quiet stars, its engines humming softly, the galaxy's silence was no longer one of fear, but of awe. Earth had spoken again, and the universe would never forget.